Tonight, we're diving into the chilling true story of Poveglia Island, a place so terrifying it's called the Island of No Return. Tucked in the Venetian lagoon between Venice and Lido, this small, abandoned island holds a history so dark it sends shivers down the spine. Locals avoid it. Fishermen steer clear. Even the bravest souls hesitate to speak its name. Why? Because Poveglia is said to be one of the most haunted places on earth, soaked in centuries of suffering and death. Our story begins in 421, when people from Padua and Este fled to Poveglia to escape barbarian invasions. For centuries, it was a quiet refuge. The island's lush fields and serene waters offered safety, allowing families to build homes and live free from fear, a small community thriving in peace. But in 1379, everything changed. The Genoan fleet attacked Venice, and Poveglia's residents were forced to flee to Giudecca. The island lay deserted, its homes crumbling, its fields overtaken by weeds. It wasn't until 1776 that Poveglia's true nightmare began. The Venetian government turned it into a quarantine station for ships entering the lagoon, a checkpoint to protect the city from disease. But when the Black Death swept through Europe in the 14th century, Poveglia became something far worse, a plague island. The deadly plague, carried by fleas on rats, ravaged cities, killing millions with gruesome symptoms, fever, boils, and blackened skin. Entire villages were wiped out, and Venice, a bustling trade hub, suffered immense losses. Bodies piled in the streets, and fear gripped the survivors. Poveglia, once a haven, was transformed into a grim quarantine, a place to isolate and abandon the afflicted. To stop the spread, officials sent anyone showing even the slightest symptoms to Poveglia. Men, women, and children were torn from their homes, loaded onto boats, and shipped to the island. Once there, they faced a horrifying fate. The sick were left to die in agony, surrounded by rotting corpses. Mass graves, known as plague pits, were dug across the island. When the pits overflowed, bodies were burned, their ashes mixing with the soil. It's said that half of Poveglia's ground is made of human remains. Over 160,000 souls lost to the plague. Imagine the terror of being sent to this island, knowing you'd never return. Your final moments filled with the stench of death and the screams of the dying. Fishermen today still avoid Poveglia's shores. They say skulls and bones sometimes surface in their nets, remnants of those plague pits. When this happens, they throw their entire catch back into the sea, unwilling to risk the curse of the island. The air feels heavy here, as if the suffering of those lost souls lingers. Locals whisper that on quiet nights, you can hear moans carried across the water. Poveglia wasn't just a graveyard, it was a place of unimaginable horror, and its darkest chapters were still to come. As we continue our journey into Poveglia's haunted history, the Immelman's story grows even more unsettling. After centuries as a plague quarantine, Poveglia's grim purpose evolved. In 1922, the island's abandoned buildings were transformed into a psychiatric hospital. But this was no place of healing. It was a house of horrors, hidden away from the world, where the mentally ill were sent to be forgotten. The hospital's isolation made it a perfect prison. Patients were locked away, far from Venice's glittering canals, their cries swallowed by the lagoon. A sign reading Reparto Psichiatria still hangs on the crumbling walls, a chilling reminder of what took place. The conditions were brutal: overcrowded wards, filthy rooms, and little care left patients suffering in silence. But the true terror came from the hospital's head doctor, a man whose name has been lost to time, but whose actions haunt Poveglia to this day. This doctor, driven by a twisted obsession, began performing cruel experiments on his patients. Lobotomies, brutal procedures where parts of the brain were destroyed, were carried out without consent. Patients were restrained, their screams echoing through the hospital's halls as the doctor drilled into their skulls. Some say he believed he could cure madness, but his methods were torture. The bell tower, a 12th century structure once part of the island's church, became a place of unspeakable acts. Locals claim the doctor took patients there, away from prying eyes, to carry out his darkest experiments. The tower looms over Poveglia, its shadow stretching across the ruins like a silent witness to the pain. By the 1930s, something broke in the doctor. He began to hear voices, whispers of the plague victims buried beneath the island. He claimed they tormented him, driving him to madness. One night, he climbed the bell tower and threw himself from the top. Some say he survived the fall, only to be choked by a mysterious mist that rose from the ground. The hospital staff found his body, but no one spoke of what happened. The tower's bell was removed in 1806, yet locals swear they hear it tolling on foggy nights, as if the doctor's spirit still lingers, ringing out his guilt. The hospital closed in 1968, and Poveglia was abandoned once more. Its buildings, caverna, church, hospital, and staff quarters stand in ruins, overtaken by vines and decay. Visitors who've snuck onto the island report an oppressive atmosphere, like being watched. Some hear footsteps in empty rooms or distant screams. The island feels alive with the pain of those who suffered there, their anguish trapped in the crumbling walls. Now we venture into Poveglia's present, where its haunted legacy refuses to fade, gripping the island in an eternal curse. The Italian government has sealed Poveglia off, banning all visitors without special permission, citing the danger of collapsing structures. But whispers persist that the true reason is far darker: to keep the island's restless spirits contained. Even researchers and filmmakers granted rare access rarely stay long, driven away by an overwhelming sense of dread that seeps into their bones. Poveglia's desolation only amplifies its terror, its silence broken by sounds no living soul should hear. In 2014, the government auctioned a 99-year lease, hoping to transform Poveglia into a luxury hotel. An Italian businessman bid €513,000, but the deal collapsed. Construction crews sent to survey the site fled after a single night, reporting blood-curdling screams and shadowy figures lurking in the ruins. One worker claimed a cold hand gripped his arm in the dark, though no one was there. The island remains untouched, its hospital wards choked with vines, its plague pits hidden beneath the earth. Erosion has exposed bones along the shores, and fishermen still pull skulls from their nets, quickly casting them back to avoid the island's curse. The bell tower, now a decaying lighthouse, stands as Poveglia's most haunted sentinel. Its silhouette pierces the fog, a grim reminder of the doctor's fatal plunge. Visitors who've dared approach it describe an unnatural cold, even in summer, and the sensation of being watched by unseen eyes. In 2016, a American paranormal investigators were rescued from Poveglia after nightfall, found in a panic, babbling about voices whispering leave and shapes moving in the dark. In 2023, an Irish YouTuber spent a night on the island, capturing Italian words like vatene, go away, and morta, death, on a radio device. He fled at dawn, swearing something followed him to the shore, its footsteps crunching in the gravel behind him. The plague pits, scattered across Poveglia, hold the remains of over 160,000 souls, their suffering etched into the island's soil. Archaeologists have found similar mass graves on nearby islands, confirming the horrific scale of death. Visitors report sudden waves of nausea near these sites, as if the ground itself weeps with pain. Some hear faint cries or feel a tug at their clothes, like a child begging for help. The air grows thick, heavy with the weight of centuries of agony. Poveglia's history: plague victims burned alive, patients tortured, a doctor driven to suicide, has created a place where the veil between worlds is thin. As night falls, the island's true nature awakens. Locals say the lagoon carries whispers across the water, moans of the lost blending with the tolling of a bell that no longer exists. Imagine standing alone on Poveglia's shores, the fog closing in, the tower's shadow looming. Would you dare linger, knowing the spirits of the damned surround you? Or would you flee, praying their cold hands don't follow? Poveglia is no mere island. It's a prison for souls that will never rest.